Paul, give us some sort of idea of how recession has been in terms of manufacturing, and particularly in your sector. Has it presented particular challenges, for example, with Far East competitors?
Yes, it has indeed. The recession has been hard in the last 12 months, and we continue to strive to be as cost competitive as we can against our kind of friends and colleagues, as we call them, out in China and the Far East. But it is getting ever more difficult, and you hear every day of manufacturers who are offshoring their kind of manufacturing facilities. At this moment, we have full intention to make sure that we not only continue to onshore our manufacturing, but we invest in making sure that we're going to be around for years to come. If you look at it purely on a financial basis, of course it's going to be cheaper. Just on a pure employment cost basis, it is cheaper to employ people out in China, and it's cheaper to manufacture on that basis out in China. What China aren't able to bring to the table at this moment in time is the speed to market. And in the recession, in particular, what our customers like to think and like to have is products which can get onto their shelves very quickly and then be sold very quickly, because that's cash to them. So in many respects, although we've experienced a little bit of a downturn, we've actually experienced a little bit of an upturn as well in relation to the fact that we've got more customers asking for more replenishment stock, asking for good terms of business, which is going to be good for us.
Your factory is based in Flimby,
yeah,
and you've also got a headquarters in Warrington.
That's correct.
You pride yourself on the high engagement across your workforce. Perhaps you could give us some sort of idea how you've achieved that in terms of the HR programme.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we have two parts to our workforce, really. We have sales and marketing kind of functions, which spread right across the region: Germany, France, Scandinavia, and down into Central Europe, and down into South Africa, etc. And then we have our manufacturing facility. And by far the most difficult and challenging area to get it total engagement and total innovation is in the manufacturing facility. With the sales and marketing functions, you've got creative people. They're out there selling. They need to be creative. It's part of their kind of DNA and their bread and butter, as we would call it. So we don't have many challenges in terms of getting total engagement from our sales and marketing teams. If they're successful, they get rewarded at the end of it. But moreover, they're working for a great brand, and that's great prestige for them. In a manufacturing facility, it's a little more challenging. You've got people doing repetitive work on a day-to-day basis. So a few years ago, we launched a major program of change and innovation in the factory, whereby we wanted to overhaul our factory capability. We wanted to create a capacity in the factory to absorb more products and more business in the future. And we set about using some lean manufacturing techniques coupled with innovation and engagement techniques, and launched a major program of change in the factory, which has brought about some fantastic results. And I think if you go to the factory now and you were to walk around and talk to people, not only would you hear it in their voices, but they love working for the company and they love working with the people, but you'd see it in the work. Their work is phenomenally good. We have less than 0.5 percentage point defects at this moment in time. We have a productivity improvement over the last couple of years of 35%, which is enormous. And our costs are actually falling as a result of that productivity improvement. So our cost per unit are coming down by about 20% in the last couple of years as well. So it's a good news story in that respect. It's been hard work, but it's been good.
I suppose a good indicator of the high engagement level that you've got at New Balance is recently where the area was particularly hit hard by the weather, and I understand that you kept the factory going, and there was very little absenteeism, even though people were very hard hit by it. Perhaps you could give us an idea of what that was like.
Well, those dreadful events, the dreadful floods that occurred in Cumbria back in November, everybody will remember. The pictures and the television footage of Cockermouth High Street and of Workington and the bridges that fell down. The TV cameras were there for 2 or 3 weeks, but the suffering and the hardship was continued for the last 3 months. and will continue for many months to come. I mean, quite simply, a lot of our associates live merely 5 or 10 minutes drive away from the factory. Yet, because the road system is disrupted and the bridges are out of action, if they were to drive into work now, it takes them probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, one way, which is a significant increase on their journey time. And on a long day in the factory as well, that's a significant increase on their daytime. So some of the things that we immediately did was we made arrangements with the local train companies, local bus companies, to make sure that there were train and bus companies, bus services to bring people in. The train service in particular has been pretty key, so the building of a temporary station platform, we were lobbying hard for that from day one. We've laid on coaches for people to pick them up in the morning at an early start and take them back to the train station. And actually the leadership team, the management team, where we have people who stay on later in the evening, personally drive people back home, which is a great little story. And in the 4 to 5 weeks leading up to Christmas after the floods, we had 0 absenteeism. Everybody in the factory, without exception, made an effort to get into work. I think that says a lot for not just New Balance, but it says a lot for the state of the British workforce and British manufacturing. When the chips are down, there's a kind of sense of pride of being British and dealing with difficult situations, and they've dealt with it fantastically well.
There's lots of exciting things happening in the sports world. For example, 2012, New Balance, I know, has got a lot of plans in terms of product. 2010, coming out of recession and beyond, how are you positioning the HR strategy in order to fulfil the needs of the business?
Yep, I mean, there's 2 things we're doing there. One is that we're focusing very much on our leadership capability and looking at how we scale up our leadership capability in the organisation. 2012 is coming. You've got many events following 2012, Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, etc. So we think just out on the radar that there's going to be a tremendous upsurge in terms of the New Balance brand across the United Kingdom in particular, but also across Europe. So we need to have in place strategically positioned leaders who are able to build organisations which are capable of managing that increase in business, but also build organisations which are flexible enough to adapt to different circumstances which present themselves in those jurisdictions. And that's going to be part of our key HR strategy, is building that leadership competence. The other piece is building from within. We have a fantastic pool of associates right across the region again, and identifying and accessing that talent and bringing that talent through the organisation is key to our future success. I know from my own personal experience that coming into an organisation, coming into New Balance just as a new organisation, took me 6 months just to work out what went on and who did what. It took me another 6 months to work out the industry. And even now, still learn quite a bit about the industry. But it took me a good year, just over a year, just to learn about the industry and why we did things in certain ways. So you can invest a lot of time in bringing people on, a lot of money in bringing people on from external capacity, with no sense of assuredness that they're going to be successful. Or you can invest a lot of time and money in your own people that you know are going to be guaranteed to be successful in the future. And I think that's the second big tranche of our strategy going forwards. How do we invest in our own people to make sure they're the leaders of tomorrow and they're building our organisation tomorrow?
In terms of specifically HR as a role, it's obviously over the past years has changed and repositioned itself. What do you think is the future for HR? Do you think will remain as relevant as it has been? Do you think that its position will be more pragmatic, or do you think it can continue to be innovative and forward-looking?
I think there's only one future for HR, and that is to be innovative and forward-looking. HR has a role to play in leading the company, has a role to play in leading organisations through periods of turbulence and change. And the good HR folks that are out there, good HR leaders, we were at the forefront of those programs of change. We'll be at the forefront of those innovation programs. And if you don't innovate at the end of the day, then effectively you don't have a future. And if our HR colleagues around in the environment aren't able to innovate, or let innovation die and fall by the wayside, then I think the only future that HR will have is the traditional 20 years ago HR administration function, and that will be it. And quite frankly, the administrative side of HR can be handled anywhere around the world. But the true value of HR is having HR folks who are not considered HR in themselves, but are considered as business leaders and can lead businesses, as I said, through periods of turbulence and change, which is undoubtedly going to be two key words that we're going to use in the next 3 to 5 years and beyond.
Yeah. Do you think that the downturn in the economy challenged that position in so much as HR potentially moving back to a more administrative, hire and fire role?
I think it did. I think the good HR folks that are out there were able to take on that challenge. And you see now that there's a budding few HR folks who are still innovating, are still leading the change and still leading from the front. They're the ones who are going to be around in 2 or 3 years' time, who are going to have great HR roles, who are going to have great HR functions, and they'll be highly thought of in the HR industry. And I think those HR folks who became complacent over the last 3 years, because let's face it, there have been some, who became complacent in what they do and comfortable in what they do, they're the ones who are having a short, sharp shock, and they're having to wake up to the fact that potentially they may not have a job in 6 months' time, or the job that they did have, that they enjoyed so much because it was so comfortable, are actually now outside of their comfort zone. And that's, I think, interesting, because the whole of the HR environment is slowly being shaken up in a way that's not been shaken up for probably 20 years.